doesn't matter, I'm just trying to learn.
And you got one as an at-large appointment, I think that's Lee. Lee is an at-large appointee, I think.
Okay, and Barbara?
Barbara got appointed by, the lady that was a commissioner,
Fair Commander?
no, when that Barker ran in her seat. Late, he was coming to the
Karen, you ready? You want us to wait?
Please, no.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started if y'all want to. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation, if you don't mind standing. Lord, we just want to ask you to be with us tonight, give us wisdom and discernment on the decisions we make here for Walton County, and that we make the best for the citizens here. Trust and we pray, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting on April 8th? Got any questions? Comments? Motion?
Move to accept.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're good. Rachel, you gonna start us off? No? Well, we can wait on her. I mean, I didn't realize she wasn't in here, so. You wanna go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll get the first one out of the way.
Okay. Well, we have a couple that are continued, but we can get into that one.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with that, is just, there is a request to continue on the Walton Civic Use LSA to the June 10th, 2021 meeting.
Sorry. We did.
I make a motion that we continue the Walton County Civic Use LSA and zoning change till the June meeting.
Second? We have a second? Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right, next one. We've got another one, workforce housing. You want to get that one for us, Chris?
We're also requesting to continue this one to the June 10th meeting. We're going to take it to the county's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, which is early June, and so we're going to get their input. This basically is just going to be the policy that we use when people are requesting density bonuses, or potentially in the mobility plan to account for any potential negative impacts to workforce or attainable housing development. So it'll come back to you then after that committee makes its recommendations.
Okay. Motion?
Motion.
Motion approved. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Did you pick them up, Karen? Dan made the motion, and Tom.
Test. Yeah.
So we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there one more that we're continuing?
Yes.
I think there's one more on. Okay. We need a motion. Motion to continue? A second? We got a second?
Yes, sir.
And, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Bob.
Morning, Mr. Chair, or evening. This is a land use amendment rezoning application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates on behalf of SRB Land LLC, requesting to change current future land use of residential with a zoning district of neighborhood infill to a future land use of mixed use in the zoning district of coastal center mixed use on 9.75 plus or minus acres. And the parcel number can be identified in the staff report. Mr. Chair, there are no outstanding staff comments in this issue. The proposed amendment is consistent with the Walton County Comprehensive Plan based on findings and other information contained in this report. There are some you have a new public comment that's on your desk there, and the other ones are predominantly about the previous request for industrial, but I kept them in because it was the same project, but they have downgraded the request to what we're hearing today.
Okay.
If you have no questions for me, I'd like to enter staff report and record.
Questions for staff?
So this is being upgraded from residential to commercial?
No, sir. It's going from a future land use of residential and a zoning of neighborhood infill to request is to change it to mixed use as the future land use and zoning as coastal center mixed use.
Does that increase the density?
Yes. And it allows for this use, the RV park, where they were asking for industrial previously, and that would open up everything that's in the industrial. This would tighten up the uses that are also allowed in there to make it more reflective of the property around it.
What road is this off of?
Mall Road, and it goes straight to 98.
You know where the Helen McCall Park is down there, the baseball fields and everything?
Right above it.
Right next to that.
Has there been a traffic density study?
The the traffic report has been done and it's been included into your exhibits, but the traffic confirmation and everything is done in the development order, which the development order isn't ready to move forward yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But there is a traffic study and analysis in your exhibits.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, sir.
And I'll turn it over to Mr. Burgess, the project applicant.
Thank you, Bob. My name is Dean Burgess. I'm with Emerald Coast Associates. We are the agent to the applicant for the land use change and zoning change that's before you tonight. Bob did a pretty good job of introducing what the amendment is asking. Very briefly, I'd like to just orient anybody in the board that may not be familiar with the intersection and Mall Drive. And I'll start with the zoning map. And our property sits right here. This is Mall Drive, runs down north-south here, and basically terminates at the mosquito control ditch, and the baseball fields are on these properties in green. And recently there was a road that was put in, Rena Arnett Drive, that comes out to 393 here. But the importance of the zoning map is to illustrate all this pink area here is village mixed use along Highway 98, which is a commercial, largely commercial designation. More than likely, anything that's not built out along here is going to be commercial in the future with highway frontage. To the south of that is St. Rita Church. This yellow-colored zoning category is infill. The church was a pre-existing, it's a non-conforming use within the residential use of infill, but St. Rita Church is on this property. Our property, which is roughly 10 acres that's vacant, Again, the green property here is the baseball fields, working north up the other side of the road. This is also owned by Walton County, will more than likely be an expansion, hopefully, of the baseball fields and or soccer fields. Church of God has a church that is not constructed but is under construction or will be shortly. The Saltair PUD occupies the remainder of the property, which is a small neighborhood and village mixed use. What I'd like to do is go ahead and pass out some handouts. They will follow the exhibits that I have, but I thought it might be convenient for you all to have a copy of it so you can possibly see better than what you can from the boards. I guess one for legal, one for each board member.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ours is. Yeah. Not turned on.
There are.
Oh, your monitor, your screen.
No, we're good.
Not plugged up?
All right, Exhibit A in the packet that I handed out, the first exhibit, is what I call the vicinity map of the area. And again, the development pattern between Thompson Road and 393 is largely commercial, some residential as you get towards Thompson Road. But what I'd like to focus on is what has been approved and what's existing in the area, particularly along Mall Drive. Now, I'll start with the largest parcel, which is the Saltair PUD that I believe you all saw a couple of months ago, the concept plan, as well as the design development plan. That consists of about 24.5 acres, 34,200 square feet of commercial, 256 apartments, and a recycling center that'll be relocated onto within the development. Currently, there's a recycling center that's on the very north end of the property here that the county maintains. That's a true mixed-use development. The apartments, the commercial development that's associated with it, in my opinion, will be very tastefully done, and it's a welcomed addition to the Mall Drive area. Prior to it coming, I guess the best way to describe Mall Drive was somewhat of a hodgepodge of uses. You had the recycling center on the north end of the property here. South of that is the U-Haul and boat storage facility. Then there was the vacant land that will be Saltair. South of that, of course, is the ball fields that I referenced, one of which is vacant now. And working from the south back up on the east side of the road, ball fields, our subject property, St. Rita Church, and then there's the golf cart company on 98. So really on Mall Drive, what exists is no residential development with the exception of the apartments that are associated with Saltair. So the biggest distinction that I wanted to draw is the development pattern has kind of made the infill zoning somewhat obsolete. As a matter of fact, in talking with the design group, I said to myself, if it had no assigned zoning category and land use category to it at this point, I'd probably have a pretty hard time convincing myself and the board that infill was appropriate and the best use for that property. In fact, we discussed it with the developer, Pike Hall, and Jerry Bishop, his former business partner. And they've done work in Walton County for 20 or more years, over 20 years. They did the courtyards at Santa Rosa Beach, Fairway Villas, both of which are very tasteful, successful multifamily developments. And we even thought about that kind of product on the property. And in this particular setting, with the mixture of uses, it just didn't seem appropriate. It just didn't seem to work. Particularly the baseball fields. There's a lot of, I love the baseball fields, don't get me wrong. I spent 12 of the best years of my life on that field with my kids, coaching, and going to 3 state tournaments. But they're loud. The lights are bright, and as much as I enjoyed the fields, I don't think I'd want to live next to them as a resident, certainly not as a permanent resident. So the first thing I wanted to do was kind of an evaluation of the existing zoning, and that I just don't see that it's the best use for the property, and certainly not one that we'd have confidence in the quality of residential development and the price point that I think South Walton deserves. Moving on to the proposed land use designations, as Bob had said, we're proposing to go from residential to a mixed-use land use category, and a zoning of coastal center mixed use from an infill land use category. In particular, coastal center mixed use zoning states that it supports economic development by providing a specific defined location where multiple opportunities for working, shopping, entertainment, lodging, and living are provided. It's no secret that the end result of what we want to place out there is an RV resort. Not an RV park, certainly not a trailer park. It's an RV resort. And without getting into the project too far, I just wanted to draw a simple distinction between the two. There will be rules and regulations, an on-site manager, 24/7, 24/7 security cameras. Any RV that's over 10 years old will not be allowed in the park without previous review and scrutiny of the manager. There will be a clubhouse and pool facility. It will be an upscaled resort for RVs. There's limits on the size of the RVs. They probably range from anywhere from $150,000 to $600,000 for these RVs. The people that own them have pride, and they're not going to come in and tear up their own RV. Whereas a rental place, you go to rent a condominium or a house or whatever have you, it's not yours. You do what you want and you leave. These people own them. They take pride in them. So basically, I think what the Coastal Center mixed use purpose, as stated, requests, I think this would be an addition that would help to formulate that. This fragmented little road, Mall Drive, that seemingly has disjointed uses, I think would become cohesive. As an RV resort, I know when I was doing travel ball with my kids, if I had the opportunity to rent an RV space during a travel ball tournament right next to the field, I would have been there all day, all day long. So I think there's a relationship that can be built with the baseball fields. Certainly, the commercial uses within Saltaire, the people owning and staying in the RV resort would dine at the restaurants, shop at the shopping opportunities that they have, use their greenway system even. And even the U-Haul place, they sell propane at the U-Haul facility. I'm sure that an arrangement could be negotiated between the RV park and the U-Haul place to provide propane to the folks that may need it within the park. Recycling facility walks hand in hand with the RV resort as well. There'll be a need for recyclables, and it's right across the street. So I think it would help to build the cohesiveness of Mall Drive and the surrounding areas, and it's in keeping with the development pattern that's occurring throughout the area. I understand that we will have some people speak, and I'm not ignoring the fact that there is a residential neighborhood directly to the east of this particular property. We're aware of that, we're sensitive to it, and we have proposed a larger than required buffer, 25-foot buffer between our property and theirs. We have only 2 units that abut that particular property line. We will be also putting up a 6-foot vinyl wall between us and that property. And we pledge to continue to work with those folks to address those matters. We're kind of getting a little bit into the project review, but you know, like I say, it's no secret what we intend to do, so I don't mind talking a little bit about it. So,
Where's the pool and clubhouse gonna be?
the pool and clubhouse will be in the northwest corner, which actually backs up to the church's daycare facility, and playground. If there were any other questions of the board, I'd be happy to answer them, but essentially that's our presentation.
Do you have a diagram of how the sites are laid out?
It's in your packet, sir.
I don't have a board with me, but as I understand, it's in your packet. They are broken up into 2 sections, east and west. There's a wetland that runs through the middle of the property. We're not disturbing the wetland for any reason other than to cross the wetland.
Okay. You got any more questions?
I have a question. I have a question of the staff. Could you remind me what can go into neighborhood infill? What's allowed in neighborhood infill?
This is it.
It can be residential.
Right.
It allows for commercial use also.
It does also allow commercial?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Which I'm not sure commercial would be that or not, where it's located. Is there some type of wetland on the east end? Is there, or a mosquito control ditch or something on the east end?
There is a mosquito control ditch, yes, that runs north-south and actually along the southern border of our property as well.
So it runs across the bottom and up the east side?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Dan, you got any questions?
Anytime we're talking about,
And we're gonna let public talk too, so we still got that. I didn't know if you had any more questions for the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it to public comment. Did you want to speak? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Barbara Morano. When I got wind of this RV resort, I decided I needed to come. What the gentleman just described to you was the Salt Air Project. We're not talking about the Salt Air Project. We're talking about something else, a rezoning. The Edgewood Terrace subdivision is the most important part of this diagram that you're looking at. The land use change is going from really residential to the coastal mixed zone. I understand it's the right of the applicant to ask for a zoning change, but the applicant does not have the right to expect this change under any legal circumstance. Zoning changes in Walton County have historically gone from less dense to more dense with each rezoning. Rarely does it ever go back the opposite way. Why must we recommend this request? We're packing sardines into a can. We're not talking about a family that wants to build a home for their children on their farmland. This property is adjacent to a residential community known as Edgewood Terrace. We have 2 churches on this street, as well as the best and only recreation park in Walton County, south of 98, which is Helen McCall. I'm sure there are many families that would like to live on those 10 acres and take advantage of all the amenities that are there. I'm asking that you do not take this residential classification away. Basically, what I heard before was smoke and mirrors. They're talking about Mole Drive and how it's changed. Unfortunately, it has changed because people have taken the residential away. The Walton County Comprehensive Plan, as we know and understand, is a long-term guide for future growth and community development. It captures the vision of what the community wants in the future. It has community involvement and input. It is what the community and the local government want. This property is zoned residential, and residential is not an RV resort with rental leased pads. The engineer talked about renting an RV. Is that what's going to happen there, as well as people coming in? That is why the applicant is asking for this change. This is not the vision of what the community wants, and it is not the vision that the area wants. The applicant has already revealed his plans for an RV resort of 66 pads, 30 by 80, on really less than 7.7 acres. And it's going to include a pool, but 2.2 of those acres are in wetlands. 66 RVs lined up, one next to each other, and you have that diagram. It's not in a park-like setting. It's not on a beach. It's not on a dune lake. There's no comparison to Topsail and Grayton State Park. In my opinion, this is an unattractive urban blight. There's another word for it, but I won't go there. This is not luxury. This is a project that's very concerning. 66 RVs lined up like attached houses. If you recommend this rezoning, then you will automatically be recommending the RV resort. No doubt about that at all. There's no turning back legally, but you can recommend not to rezone this now. There'll be no challenge in courts, and the applicant will have to withdraw the application for the major development application, which has already been submitted, which I find extremely strange. It's almost like a done deal. The zoning change has not been approved yet. Plans are in the works, just as I speak, to build this project. A connector road has already been built to connect Mall Drive to 393, donated by a developer, I believe. The most important function of a comp plan is to serve as a resource manual. It establishes standards which all land use decisions in the community should be evaluated. Communities that consistently make land use decisions based on their comp plan reduce their exposure to legal action and improve the quality and compatibility of new developments. This zoning change does not improve the quality and compatibility in that area. Make no mistake about that. Commissioners, you see many projects before you. We place our trust in you to abide by the comp plan, and only under very unusual circumstances should the zoning be recommended to be changed. Otherwise, Why have a comprehensive plan? Why have a comprehensive plan? The community is asking that you do not recommend this rezoning. No legal challenges, no hardship for the owner. Take the step in the right direction and follow the comp plan. You are our voice. You are our representatives. You are the keepers of the key that can keep the comp plan intact. Opening this door just a smidgen to let this rezoning in is not the answer. Let's follow the comp plan. South Walton deserves this. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak? Yes, sir.
Very much for letting me speak. My name is Michael Henry, and I'm the president of the Edgewood Terrace Homeowners Association. And my property also immediately is adjacent to the proposed RV park. I submitted a few questions, but I know your day probably didn't start at 4 o'clock, so I don't want to waste your time. I just have one question, and that is, how would this benefit our community? And how would it benefit the homeowners of Edgewood Terrace as well? I've spoken to many of the homeowners in my community, and none of them have been in favor of this venture. We're concerned that the RV park use would create noise pollution as well as light pollution onto our property. The way the RV park is laid out, there'll be homes or RVs that will be adjacent to our properties and be able to look right into our backyards. The 6-foot privacy fence will do nothing to prevent the view into our properties because they're going to elevate their land by 2 feet. So it's going to slope down to the drainage ditch, which is on my property. And so when they pull up their RVs, they'll just look right out their windows into my home, and there'll be no privacy there whatsoever. So I know that from Grayton Beach to Henderson Beach, there are 9 RV parks already in existence. I know that a few months ago you approved another one on the bay side of 98 for another RV park. Now, and the difference was that property was already zoned industrial. So RV park was probably the lesser of the 2 evils for those individuals that live near there. So RV park is better than a concrete factory or something of that nature. But for my neighbors and myself, I feel that this will be a bad thing for our community. And when we purchased our homes, we purchased knowing that it was zoned residential infill. So it's kind of changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game for us. And we want the best for Walton County. We want the best for our community. But for our personal circumstances, we think that this would be a bad choice to change the zoning of this property.
Yes, sir. Anybody else in the audience want to speak on this? Okay, we have anybody on Zoom? Celeste Cabina?
Yes. I want to speak on this issue. And I'm just, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I want to endorse everything that Barbara Morano said. I think that was very well laid out. But I want to add some things that are just kind of real life. You're putting next to a church, next to an playground, basically a transient community. And you can call it a RV resort or a trailer park or whatever, and you don't know, are people going to start living in their RVs there, and what kind of control over who comes in and out of that community. I really think it's completely inappropriate. And even though there is that additional street that's put in there, that's a very small area to put 64 massive vehicles that have to come in and out. And, you know, I've sat through a number of meetings where there's a big concern about, we need to add roads to areas because of hurricane evacuation or just evacuation for fires in that area. And I think it's totally inappropriate to put 64 massive RVs, trailers, whatever, in an area like that, and then you're gonna have to possibly evacuate those people with no control. And I just think this land use change should not move forward, and certainly a RV park, trailer park, whatever you call it, is completely inappropriate to add that into South Walton with all our growth problems and infrastructure problems at this point. That's it.
All right, thank you. I got a question real quick for staff. The zoning that it is now, residential, with neighborhood infill, what is the, density on that? 8 per acre? So. 8 per acre, yeah. So roughly there, with, how many acres is this? A little less than 10 acres? So you're looking,
9.93.
so you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 townhomes that they could be built in there.
Correct. Yes, with the wetlands, because we're not impacting them.
So that's the reason I'm asking is, yeah, there's a lot, there's going to be a lot of density in there anyway, if we don't change the zoning. Anyway, I'm sorry, we had somebody else want to speak. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Randy Gardner. I had a few comments and, in my opinion, to try to get back on track. The purpose for this meeting tonight was for a land use change. The presentation that Mr. Burgess made was to emphasize how the area from Thompson Road to 98 is transitioning, how the south side of 98 in that area, Moore Drive, is transitioning. So the real question for tonight is not about it, is an RV park. Between now and the 10th of June, I don't expect the applicant to change that, but when this project comes before you next as a development order, that would be the more appropriate time to talk about how many spaces, what the actual use is going to be, what the quality of the RV resort is going to be. That's the place. The real question, in my opinion, tonight should be, that I feel was presented and got distorted, is does this property fit a modem or fit a circumstance where land use away from residential, which is in the area, of course, now is only Edgewood. And the question of what will be put on that property, which the applicant has fully said he expects to do a development order, but that'll only be if it's approved by this board and by the county commission. Tonight is simply a land use change, and it is compatible with Saltaire. Is it compatible with the light industrial farmers market, the car wash is being built, and everything in that area? Thank you.
Sure. We got anybody else on Zoom? Shelley Myers, you there?
Yes, hi. My name is Shelley Myers, and I would like to echo Barbara Morano's concern. I think she said it very well, and I am just going to ask that we deny any rezoning of this property. Just deny any rezoning. There's no reason for it. Thank you so much for listening to my comment and for having this meeting and for your time.
Thank you. Margaret Landry, you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I just had a couple of comments. One was about the neighborhood infill. Someone asked what was neighborhood infill exactly? What was the density? And as the code reads, the density in neighborhood infill can be anywhere from 2 dwellings per acre to 8 dwellings per acre. But under Section G, Special Development Standards, it is supposed to reflect the neighborhood. That is what neighborhood infill means. So whether that reflects the neighborhood and is compatible with the neighborhood. The other thing I wanted to mention is just from the Walton County interactive map, and, sometimes these maps aren't correct, I understand that, but it shows that there's a substantial amount more wetlands than we've talked about for this property. So I think we need to be aware of that. And then the third thing is that, the neighborhood property values, what the gentleman was saying about, the neighborhood property values. But I just think we don't need the density. It doesn't mean they can get, just because they have neighborhood infill, 8 dwellings per acre or whatever it is. I don't think we need a zoning change, and, it can be as low as 2 in neighborhood infill. So I would also echo what everyone else said about the not changing the zoning, and thank you very much for your time and attention.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. We got anybody else on Zoom? That's it? Okay. You want to comment on some of that?
Yeah, I'll be as brief as possible in my responses. And I think the last comment I think I'll take first, or respond to first. Margaret Landry is exactly right. The infill category requires that you demonstrate compatibility with what surrounds the property. We're currently surrounded by a ball field, a mixed-use development, and a church. And to the east is a subdivision that was platted in 1990, when there was nothing out in this area. Nothing else was developed with the exception of Shannon Drive had one building that was built in 1986. Now it's blossomed to a full industrial park. To the northeast is the Shannon Drive Industrial Park. To the southeast is the Arnett Farmers Market under an light industrial designation. Those are the items that we are to demonstrate compatibility with. Just to reiterate myself, I don't see that it is fitting to put a residential subdivision in an area that clearly has developed as a mixed-use area. And on Mall Drive, there are no residential uses at all. So that was part of our point, and a large part of our presentation is the infill category that was designated in 1996 simply doesn't apply. It's not a reasonable category for this property anymore. Some of the other concerns were regarding density and traffic, just generalizing. And as pointed out, we've got 66 pads, and to reiterate, there's not going to be RVs there that somebody can rent. You bring your own RV that you have purchased and you have pride in to vacation in for a week or 2 or 3, whatever the case may be. No long-term rentals, etc. Again, I don't want to get too far into the development. It's not the purpose of this meeting. And the idea of one of the biggest concerns that I've heard from the onset of this land use change and project was the concern with transient people coming in. And that simply is not the model for this. It's not the business model. It's not how it will perform. These are only available to people who own an RV, come in to Walton County to enjoy themselves, vacation, and then they take their RV and leave the pad for another person to occupy. I think in general, the last one was Barbara Morano's comment regarding the comp plan. And again, this property was designated as infill in 1996. A lot has happened since 1996. However, we did hear the staff say that the proposed request for land use change does meet the comprehensive plan, and there weren't any outstanding staff comments. And so I believe we are following the comprehensive plan. And I'd be happy to entertain any further questions the board has.
I do have another one. Could you, someone raised the question saying they thought wetlands was more, you said 2 what acres?
Roughly a little over 2 acres of wetlands, 2.6 acres or so, in the middle of the property. And,
Someone had questioned that, and I just wanted to confirm that that's what it was.
yeah, well, that was more than likely off the National Wetlands Inventory, and those maps are, if they're anything, they're conservative, showing more wetlands than when you get an environmental professional out there to review them, which we have done. Jeremy Reiser with ETech was our environmental scientist. He's been in the area for over 20 years.
And they go out there by hand and.
They manually go out there, check the wetlands. We've got a wetland crossing that will be permitted, so the agencies not only look at where we're crossing, they review the wetland lines. So I have full confidence in the wetland delineation that we've done.
Dean, if say the land use didn't go through and they stay with the residential neighborhood infill, what would be more likely the project that would go out there?
I would be speculating, but
I'm sure they probably talked about it some because they looked at this before they decided to go with the land use change. So I'm sure they looked at all the options that were available to them at that land use.
It would more than likely be some sort of multifamily development, which Walton County has seen an awful lot of in recent times, particularly the Chat Holly area and even some in this area. Even townhomes, I think the price point would be a bit concerning. Our end result, whenever we looked at what can we do under infill, was that based on the other surrounding uses, residential was just not a good option for this property.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll close it down and commission, questions, comments?
I'll make a comment. With the type of RVs, from what I understand they're bringing in, the average age of an RV owner in the United States is 48 years old. Level. And I used to live next to an RV park or resort down in Seagrove, which is now Sea Nest Village. And it was always very quiet, no trouble. And then the market boomed and they sold the property, sold the park, and now there's 62 homes in that subdivision. And it was better when it was an RV park because people cleared out during the wintertime. There was nobody there. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Shelley, public comments are over, been cut off at this point. Dan, I know you want to say something.
Okay, I've only been appointed since November, so I know I'm the new guy still. But I've noticed a common thread just about on every one of our meetings. And the developers, it seems to me, like they pick the most highly dense gridlock section of our county and they want to pack it more every meeting. And y'all surprised me, and I was really impressed with what we did to try and alleviate some of the density during our last monthly meeting. I mean, y'all just blew me away. I was impressed. And it looks like this is the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the busiest, most densest packed section of our county that we don't have the infrastructure now to support. Roads down there are gridlocked during peak seasons. And I haven't heard one resident, anybody that's really got skin in the game, and when I say skin in the game, I mean live there, say anything positive about this. And one of the things that impressed me with the opening prayer that you made was that we make decisions in the best interest of the people of Walton County. And I think the best interest of the people that live there, that have spoken, that are asking for our help to keep their community residential as much as possible, that we owe that to them. And I know you say that staff can't find anything wrong with this, but I feel a bigger obligation to our citizens than I do the staff. Because if it wasn't for the citizens, what would we be doing here? We're their representatives, and they don't want it. I'd like to make a motion that we not approve this.
Well, you can make a motion. I don't know that we're done with all the comments, but we've got a motion. You want to see if there's a second? We need a second on the motion to deny? Okay, well, we'll continue with the comments then. And you're right, we do want to do the best thing for the citizens of Walton County, but also the citizens of Walton County, the people that own these projects, and they, you know, when they decide they're ready to do something with them, they come to us, and a lot of times, like in this case, if he uses the existing land use, a residential neighborhood infill, I'm not so sure that what they would do with that would be as intense or more intense than what we're talking about with an RV park. So that's what I'm looking at is, and I know that, you know, a lot of them say they would, you know, don't want the RV park, but do they want, could be as many as 80 townhomes in there. And the gentleman
Well,
that mentioned.
And they also said it could be commercial. It is not guaranteed with neighborhood infill that it is going to be residential.
That's true, and if there's a 2-story or 3-story townhouse sitting behind it, you'll have a hard time getting a fence high enough on your property line to keep them from staring in from there. RVs sits a lot lower than a townhouse would. I don't know, I'm just trying to think about all sides and trying to come up with the best
Okay,
answer.
so-
best.
You know, in my mind, this neighborhood is so varied.
Yeah,
It is, it is.
It's what?
Varied. You got
Varied.
so many different things. You got one residential, you got a ballpark, you got a church, there's gonna be a Burger King up on the corner.
Apartments,
Apartments,
shops.
So, I mean, a lot of houses don't want to live. Ball fields put out a lot of light at night, a lot of noise. I mean, I can't really, if you put residential houses in there, that's going to be a source of problems. I see, you know, I mean, I don't think it's such a bad fit.
And that's okay. That's okay.
well, a lot of times we have, you know, people don't like it when we do a land use change because the density increases. And that's usually why they do a land use change on something. But I'm not so sure in this one that that's the case, so I'm trying to look at it from that side too.
I know, as far as what they're going to use this for, speculation, we don't know what's going to be there. Right now, the citizens are asking that we not increase the density. And that's okay. We're going to, no matter how you vote, we're walking out of here friends, but I'm going to stand by the citizens.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
2 opposed. All right.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next item.
Yes.
Judicial, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll be open to the quasi judicial hearing, so everybody's going to speak. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? Be sworn in.
I do hereby swear or affirm that the testimony I present will be the truth,
Truth.
the whole truth,
The whole truth.
and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Okay, number 6, Eden's Landing PUD Amendment number 3. This is a request, well, this is a major development order application submitted by Interlight Engineering requesting approval to amend the previously approved Eden's Landing PUD in order to add 32 additional single-family lots and 15.35 acres with a future land use of mixed use and conservation and a zoning of traditional neighborhood development and conservation. So, we've determined that the conservation portion of this, which is approximately 0.99 acres, is a Scribner's error. So the county's going to sponsor a land use rezoning to change that to T&D. Traditional neighborhood development. And the reason for the overlay ordinance is the difference in the zoning and the land use. The existing Eden's Landing PUD is infill, and this is T&D, and most of the mixed-use standards required under the T&D zoning are being met with the current existing PUD, because the existing Eden's Landing has multifamily, single-family, and commercial. That's the reason for the overlay district. It allows you to move uses around within the PUD. So I do have a condition in there that prior to the county issuing the development order, the rezoning land use amendment has to be approved to make it all consistent. So with that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, and I'll entertain any questions.
Could you go back over that again? It took me by surprise because I must have missed it when I read it. So could you kind of lead me through that again, what the county's doing and why?
Okay, so the request is to approve the final order and the overlay ordinance.
Okay.
The reason for the overlay is because of the two zoning districts and how it's meeting the overall development requirement. Because T&D, I don't know how familiar y'all are with it, but it's got a lot of requirements in it that the other zoning districts don't have. It requires mixed use, it requires sidewalks, parallel parking. I mean, there's a lot of conditions, or a lot of requirements in T&D that aren't required in our other zoning districts. So the existing Eden's Landing PUD is meeting those requirements, most of them, because it's currently mixed use. So they got multifamily, they've got single family, and they've got commercial. But this addition, these 32 additional lots on 15.35 acres, is all single family. So that's the reason for the overlay. The overlay allows you to move uses around within the overall PUD, and this is the sixth one I think we have, the sixth PUD overlay district that we have.
A lot. Oh, yeah.
And
I got this one memorized.
And the 0.99 acres of conservation we've determined is a Scribner's error. I mean, we can't really figure out how, I mean, it's almost right in the middle of this 15 acres of T&D, so we're not quite sure how that happened. But you still have to go through the procedure to change it, so it's still going to require a land use change and a rezoning, but because it's a Scribner's error, the county's going to do that. It's going to be a county sponsor, so you will see that in the future. It'll come through this board. But we're not making the applicant do it because it's an error that we made somewhere along the line. So,
Do you need a vote on that, other than the vote on the project itself? So that it gets done?
No. I just want to make you aware that they do have to have the overlay.
Make sure.
Let's do this in two motions.
Okay.
Approve both.
Okay.
So we actually have it in the record that both were approved.
That's fine. I don't know that it's a requirement for them to do so, but I'm okay with it.
Well, it is clear that they have to have both. So technically, if you deny one,
You're denying them both.
you're denying both.
Yes.
But as a practical matter, it's probably best that the overlay district be approved separately from the other item because of the nature of it as an.
Yes.
Do we need to go through the whole process to do the overlay as far as open public comments and all that?
we'll do public comment. What we'll do is we'll take public comment, we'll treat this all as one project,
all at the
one
end?
request,
Okay,
and then there'll just be two motions at the end.
gotcha, okay.
Yeah, because the 15 acres of T&D on its own can't meet all the requirements. So that's why we need the overlay. Together, they do.
Okay. Y'all got any questions for staff?
Okay, great, thank you.
Y'all understood every bit of it?
Yeah.
All right. Sir, Mr. Smith.
Light engineering. And I know this is very complicated. I'm going to start at the beginning as well. I want to try to explain what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. Is Eden's Landing was originally approved in 2007. It was a planned unit development, and it's 11.74 acres. It was amended in 2018 and then amended again in 2020. Eden's Landing, this portion of property here. Property that we're requesting to be added to the Eden's Landing PUD is this property here. And it's important to note that this is all state land that surrounds this property. So the connection for this property is through Eden's Landing. There's actually an easement that's along this roadway that provides access to this vacant piece of property. The property that we're requesting to be added to Eden's Landing PUD is 15.34 acres, and as you can see on the aerial, it's currently vacant and wooded. As Tim presented, this has a zoning of T&D, and then the zoning of Eden's Landing is small neighborhood. So there we have two zoning districts, so there's the reason that we're requesting the PUD overlay ordinance. It's just so we can have one PUD with two zoning districts. I do want to point out the lots we're proposing, lot layout, they're larger lots than what I'm seeing, and I know you all are seeing now. They're 70 feet, 75 feet wide on average by 200 feet deep. So we're proposing 32 additional lots on that 15 acres be incorporated into the Eden's Landing PUD. I do want to point out the density as well. The density of this property, which T&D allows a maximum density of 30 units per acre, the density of this property is 2.08 units per acre. So I think that's an environmentally sensitive area. It's a creek up here on the northwestern portion of the property. We're staying away from that. We're not impacting any of the wetlands up in that area. And that's a general overview of what we're doing and why we're here. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Got any questions for the applicant?
Do you have supporting infrastructure, sewage?
We're proposing sewage for this, but we do have a force main that goes down and connects to an existing force main. So we do have a connection, yes, sir.
There'll be no septic tanks?
There's no septic tanks. Everything is, potable water lines are being added, and then sewage is being provided by manholes into a lift station, and it's being pumped into the existing force main in the front part of the development. So no septic tanks.
Wow. Doing it right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that all you got?
I want to hear what the citizens say, but so far, so good.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll open it to public comments. Anybody in the audience want to speak on this? Yes, sir.
Evening, Commissioners. John King. This is a Foreman Family Trust property. This is a beautiful piece of property. It was beautiful oaks, so again, surrounded by Eden Gardens. The Foremans had numerous opportunities to sell this property. They like what Mr. Shores is going to do. It's I think a density of 12 units an acre with the overlay change. They're doing less than 2 units an acre, I guess. It's kind of what we fight for to have development-wise, and not to just pack everything on there that you can. I've got a 25-year history of having some dealings with the Foremans and Mr. Shores, and builds a quality home. Just can't say more. He's actually a builder that can build a home with his hands, and a lost art, and builds a really great street appeal. I think all the neighbors around there are going to be very, very happy with what he puts in there. And I just encourage you to let this go on through. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this? Okay, we don't have anybody. We got Zoom people. Who we got on Zoom? Leslie Miller?
Hey, thank you for letting me speak. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my thought is I am a landowner within 300 feet of this neighborhood, and the neighborhood is very happy with their plan in a lot of ways. But one condition that we're really concerned about is Eden's Landing has yet to really meet the existing development. They have a T&D overlay, but they have yet to even build any of the commercial space. So they have built the residential side of Eden's Landing, and the side that was intended for, I think it was 32,000 square feet of commercial space, is still sitting vacant. So to come in and approve another 32 homes on 15 acres under the traditional neighborhood development requirement overlay doesn't seem realistic if they haven't met that to begin with. The other point I would like to make is this is 32 additional homes coming into Point Washington with an infrastructure that is not set up at this point to accommodate the existing homes that we have on a regular basis. We have Regional Utilities lift station at the end of 395 and Highway 98 has overflow and spillage. So we had about 62,000 gallons of sewage spill out a few weeks ago that Regional had to come pump out of some of the neighboring yards. And that project was supposed to be taken care of when the road project was scheduled for 2020. 395 is probably one of the worst condition roads we have here in South Walton. It was scheduled for to be rebuilt, to be repaved, and a multi-use path go in 2020, but that was delayed, we were told, due to COVID. So until that project moves forward, Regional Utilities will not be coming in to redo the lift station, from what I understand. So we're having a little bit of an issue there with infrastructure. We also have some major issues here in the community with our phone lines and internet lines. Our hub is still sitting here from like the 1980s. So we have situations where, you know, that is not keeping up as well. So ultimately, as a neighbor, I think it's a beautiful community, but I think until the infrastructure issues are addressed and until the neighborhood meets the current T&D requirements, adding on to it seems to be a little ahead of, I guess, ahead of the time.
Okay, well, thank you, ma'am. We got anybody else on Zoom? Eric's? Zalays?
Yes, this is Eric. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I thank you for the meeting. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a resident in Point Washington, have been for close to 15 years. There is a lot of concern in the community as we've learned about this. I would like to basically agree with what Leslie has said. Several weeks ago, we had the spill at the end of 395 where it meets with 98, which is the main lift station for all of the homes down here. And it was 68,000 gallons of raw sewage dumped out into the ditches there. And Regional was only able to recover 42,000 gallons. The remainder of it remained in the ditches. So we're talking about adding an additional 30 homes of raw sewage to an already existing problem. I've spoken with Regional Utilities. They said they will not address the pump station until the new road is put in. I've spoken with the county engineers, and the new road, he said, will not be for another 3 to 4 years minimum. The same thing with the internet connectivity. Everybody down here is fighting for internet service. Most homeowners have their internet lines running through the bushes above ground. We call CenturyLink on a monthly basis. They come out and work on it, repair it, and what they've told us consistently is they will not put new lines in until the road is done, and that the lines, as Leslie said, were put in originally in the 1980s. And then on top of that, the condition of 395 is poor to begin with, and a lot of homeowners are constantly complaining and calling the county about the potholes and having their cars knocked out of alignment. And then you add the amount of construction traffic and heavy traffic to build 30 homes on top of a road that's already in poor condition. We don't have the infrastructure for it now. And then another concern I have, I actually sat in on meetings when they were approving the original PUD, and they actually approved an increased density on that PUD, which the neighborhood did not want, and a lot of it was because they said, well, the development, the developers got in underwater and they lost their shirt, and the only way they can make money on this, anybody can, is if we increase the density, which people were not for. And as Leslie said, not only have they not fulfilled that original PUD in starting any of the commercial, but now on top of that, we're talking about bringing in more homes, after it was allowed them to increase the density, and they also reduced the setbacks of the original PUD. I don't have the notes on me, but I specifically remember being at that meeting, and the commissioners were saying, oh, we hate to do this, but if it's the only way we can get something put in here. And yet, since that happened, we still have had no infrastructure, no new infrastructure down here to handle any of this increased development. I appreciate your time and listening to me, and I would like to say I'm opposed to it.
All right, thank you. I think we got one more. Celeste Cabina?
Yes, I just want to address the fact that this is moving forward as a development order without the correct land use, and it seems like this is running concurrently, and I just feel like y'all are putting the horse before the cart before the horse, because previously y'all said we have to get a land use change before we can do a development order, and here you're either doing it concurrently or after. I'm totally confused, but it seems like you've got a piece of conservation land, even if it's just an acre, and there is no development allowed under policy L-1-8-1 on any conservation land, yet this is like being ignored, and it's like, well, whether it's a Scribner error or what, I think maybe that needs to be looked into a little bit more, and before a development is approved, you should be changing the land use. That's what you just did previously, minutes ago, yet you're not doing that here. And I think this needs to sit, have the land use change done, and then come back later when you've got that complete and take another look at this. And that's where I just don't feel like, Walton County has not always followed correct procedure, and I think this is one of those instances where it needs to step back, follow the correct procedure as it should be in the stepwise fashion. Change the land use if that's appropriate. I'm not even sure it's appropriate, so that's my comment.
All right, thank you. As far as the, we got another one? Okay, Chandler Williams? Chandler, you there?
Good afternoon. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to follow Eric's comments and completely agree with him as far as opposing, as well as another thought that needs to kind of be taken in consideration with this will be on the docket. I'm not sure if it's today or later, but the additional development off of East Point Washington Road, that's going to now be 20, I believe it's two townhomes set up with 10 units each, which was originally brought to the table as 6 residential units. So just to compound the pressure and density of Point Washington with all the issues and growth issues that are already going on. So I just wanted to voice my opinion on that and just say I oppose this development growth and going in. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Is that it? Okay, Celeste, you got something else? Celeste? Okay. Well, then we'll close public comments and. Okay, we're closing public comments. All right. David, did you want to answer any of these questions or statements? Excuse me?
Briefly, please.
Sure, yes.
I did want to address several of the questions that were raised. And as far as the commercial, this is a mixed-use planned unit development. And I know with COVID and retail, I mean, there were some delays, but the developer does have their marketing packages ready for the commercial. I don't have a time frame yet, but they have every intent to move forward and build the commercial component of this development. I don't have a time frame, but I don't want everyone to think that we're just wanting to build all the residential. We don't want to build the commercial. We do want to build the commercial component. There's just been some delays associated with that. So I did want to clarify that. And with the lift station, we're connecting to the force main that is beyond the lift station, or the force main that runs out of the lift station. We're not connecting to the lift station, and our interaction and coordination with the engineering department at Regional Utilities, there's been no discussions regarding capacity concerns, and this is by the utility that maintains the lift station. There was no concerns about capacity, but we are not going to the lift station. I'm not sure why it failed. I don't know if it's a power issue or a pump issue. I'm not sure. There could be many things.
So it wasn't a capacity issue is what they're saying?
No one said that to us.
I assume if it was, they would let everybody know that they did not have capacity.
Well,
And that
you
be
would
the
assume us
engineering
as the
department should know that.
Absolutely. They would assume they would bring that to our attention when we're coordinating with them, and they have not. And plus, we're connecting downstream from that to the force main. We're not going into the lift station, so that will not, change the function of the lift station. It'll still pump the sewage that goes to it. As far as the paving of 395, I know that's a county concern. I'm sure that's on their paving priority list. I'm not sure where that falls or the reasons, and I know it sounds like the residents have been coordinating with the county on that item. And then as far as phone line and internet, I'm not aware of that side with there being any shortages. I did want to talk about the land use. This is different than the last land use request, which was a developer-sponsored request for the county to change the land use. This request has been reviewed by your legal staff and the staff attorney, also the planning department. It has been determined that an error was made on this conservation zoning classification. So this is a county-sponsored change. And we agree, I know we're before that change, but we agree to, if you all choose to approve, that we're approved conditioned upon that occurring. I understand if it stays, and for some reason the county doesn't agree to correct the scrivener's error, that it's in the middle of our development, but we understand, and certainly understand staff's position that it was a mistake, and they want to correct that mistake. So we're comfortable if you all choose to recommend approval for it to be a condition. I mean, it would have to be a condition for us to move forward, and we accept that. So that's my brief responses. So again, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, y'all any questions for the applicant? I got a question for the attorneys. With that land use change, scrivener's error, are we following the proper procedure for getting this done, or is there something else we need to do with it?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Hall, staff land use attorney. The past practice with the county has been where there's a scrivener's error, and we've done the research to determine whether there's any rational basis for where the lines got laid out and could not locate any. The county has actually taken the comp plan amendment to correct that error directly to the BOCC for one hearing and move forward. Basically, it's because the Planning Commission's determination is whether an amendment complies with the comp plan and the land development code provisions, and where there's a scrivener's error, that evaluation is not helpful. I've asked them to go ahead and at least consider bringing it back to the Planning Commission and the BOCC to provide 2 public hearings where we could solicit to see if there's anybody has any information that we haven't seen yet that would support the opposite position, that it's not a scrivener's error. But we've done title work, we've gone through the planners who did the original maps, try to find some logical reason for this acre square. So we will, at this time, Matt Carpenter's made a determination that we'll go to the Planning Commission here in the June meeting, and then the BOCC in the following meeting to make that change. So we'll actually bring that amendment back to you
So,
at your next meeting.
so we're not supposed to vote on it tonight, or is?
Not a need to vote on the amendment itself because it's not before you.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking the overlay then.
That's correct. The overlay ordinance.
We're okay
is
with
a-
that then?
Yeah, the
for that.
overlay ordinance is another piece.
And we're good with,
That is before you tonight.
and we're good with bringing it up? We don't need to, I know it was brought up, by somebody that we should bring that up first before we do the development order. Is there any problem with that? Doing them both at the same time?
Yeah, we generally travel those two together where we have an overlay ordinance related to a PUD. And so I don't see any reason for a distinction here. As long as they're willing to accept a conditional basis that if it's not approved by the BOCC, they agree that they'll have to act accordingly.
All right. One other question. A lot of statements being made about infrastructure. It's my understanding, and I want to make sure I'm thinking correctly, we don't have the authority to turn projects down for lack of infrastructure. Is that correct?
Well, there is an element in your review of a comp plan amendment that's suitability in terms of whether or not the land use change, like the last item, was appropriate based on the suitability of the infrastructure, natural resources related to the site. To the extent that they meet a project like this one, meets concurrency standards or addresses concurrency standards in an alternate way, then you've addressed your infrastructure, the county's infrastructure criteria.
Okay.
May I ask Mr. Hall a question? Mr. Hall, I think this is a beautiful project. And I was really excited about it until I heard the citizens and the neighbors that live in the area say there's raw sewage spilling out. Now that goes beyond, way beyond an infrastructure problem. Now we're into health and welfare. Raw sewage in an area where we've got sewer lines and pump stations and everything's supposed to be working, and we're assuming that we're not at capacity and nobody knows what the problem is. And based on past history, there may be a question of trust, especially when greed and money is the prime motive. So would it be the wise, prudent thing and legally to say, this is a beautiful project, but it needs to be put on hold until we find out why this raw sewage is filling the ditches of this community and spilling over, and get the infrastructure problems fixed first before we go ahead with any development? Is that legal, wise, and prudent?
Well, as opposed to a lawyer playing an engineer on TV, I always try to defer to both Public Works and the engineers that we have hired for the county, and the engineer whose seal is going on the project that's got to stand by the project to make those calculations. There's a case where this board can consider, and staff does consider, if there are outstanding code enforcement issues, outstanding permit violations relating to a particular piece of property or a particular owner, but we're limited to that consideration. If this planning commission has heard evidence in the course of this quasi-judicial proceeding that raises a concern, you can include that both in your report, in your vote, and in your report to the BOCC.
And I'm going to go a step further for the board. While those may be issues of concern, unfortunately, the situation before you is approving a development order. Now, who is able to properly serve those areas? We get a service determination letter, and so I'll ask staff, have we received anything from the wastewater provider in that area that indicates they are unable to serve this area?
No, we require a sewer and water availability letter, so all it says is that it's available. We have that. Regional Utilities is telling us sewer and water are available.
Whether or not it's functioning properly or not.
Typically, when somebody provides an availability letter, they mean they can provide it and it is functioning properly. That is what would be implicit therein. The issue we have as a planning board is that those are issues that will be addressed with the service provider separately from the county. If they truly do have an issue where they're not properly abiding by under their provision of services, that's something that the end users could pursue against the entity that is the wastewater provider in that case. It is additionally something that FDEP would have jurisdiction over. It could be a health department issue as well. Unfortunately, without having any of those existing complaints or issues before you, we can't say we have in front of us competent substantial evidence to deny the project on that basis. And so that's why if there are issues out there, they talk about code complaints. I believe Mr. Hall would also agree that you can bring forward if there's an active DEP case or there are other health and safety issues out there. But if all we have as part of our process is an availability determination by the provider of water or wastewater, we don't have anything to rebut that in the record. Now, I understand the citizens have addressed concerns. Unfortunately, this board doesn't have the jurisdiction to address those concerns. To deny a project based on those concerns, you're going to need to have some finding that outweighs what is in the record. And so that would be up to you to determine whether competent substantial evidence exists that this somehow does not meet the concurrency standards or satisfactorily addresses those.
For the citizens who are listening to this on Zoom that have voiced their complaints about the raw sewage spillage and the infrastructure not functioning properly to the point that it's creating health, safety, and welfare concerns, what legal recourse do they have? Would they call the Walton County Health Department? Would they call EPA? What would be the citizens' recourse?
Unfortunately, neither myself nor Mr. Hall, as attorneys for the county, can advise the citizens what action to take. But I would say that certainly the Department of Health, Walton County's Health Department, DEP at the state level would both be potential groups to go to. I'm not going to say Water Management District is the most appropriate group, but certainly people do bring them in when there are watershed issues if they believe there's any kind of contamination of a watershed. All of those would be groups they could go to. Secondly, whoever is maintaining the system would be somebody that anybody who has an issue should go to, whether it be regional utilities, South Walton, City of Freeport, City of Defuniak. All of these are utility providers in this county. Whoever the provider is who the individual should go to address those issues, because the county itself doesn't maintain any of those systems.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, then we'll close public comments and commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, with all comment closed, I do want to, whether Mr. Hall or staff wants to address this, I want them to go through just so everybody here understands what Mr. Hall laid out one more time. What you've got in front of you is a request for a final development order and an overlay.
So
now, what's the next thing they'll go to the BCC, whether you want to address it or Mr. Hall? Because this is a somewhat unique procedure, and so I want everybody to understand what we are doing versus what the BCC will ultimately do.
Yes, this will go to the BCC on May 27th, but the ordinance does require 2 hearings before the board. So they'll be voting on the PUD amendment and the first reading on the 27th. So that will conclude the PUD portion, the amendment portion, but we do have to bring the ordinance back probably 2 weeks later for second reading.
And so that will not be before this board, it'll be before the BCC.
Yes.
So your job will be done at this point in time. The BCC will see it twice. The approval they issue as to the PUD on their next meeting in the month of May will be contingent on the ultimate approval of the ordinance because they are tied together. And I see the developers representative nodding that that's the understanding.
Yes.
So understand to the extent the public could raise a concern about the order of operations, Whether the BCC says, you know what, we'll wait on the PUD and do that at second reading, they have that choice. Or they can go ahead and approve it contingent on that. For you, you're only gonna see it this once. So you passing on it, your chance to do it is tonight. Then the BCC will take it up under the 2 readings and public hearings that are required for the ordinance adoption. So that's why you're seeing it's being approved and what may appear out of order, but in reality, the BCC's process will clean that up.
Well, and I wanted to also say that we didn't want to punish the applicant for our mistake. So we're letting this move forward while we do the land use rezoning, because it was the county's error, it wasn't the applicant's error. So it is different than we normally do it. This is not the order that normally we would go through a project. But again, we don't want to penalize them for our mistakes, so we're doing them concurrently with the condition that we won't issue the development order until that rezoning land use change has been approved.
And staff's affirming to this board for the record that it has complied with everything necessary for a county-sponsored amendment.
Yes.
I understand there are different parts of the statute when the developer brings something forward when the county does, so the county can well do that, but they have to follow those terms, and staff's putting forward they've done it, and Mr. Hall's nodding, so I assure you that's what they're saying they've done.
So we'll need a motion.
Two motions, I guess we would take up first, let's take up first the final development order contingent it will be an approval contingent on the ultimate adoption of the ordinance or a denial. Okay. Those would be your options.
All right. Do y'all got any more questions or statements on this project?
I like the project, and I certainly understand why the developers held off on the commercial. I would wait, and if I was on this project, I would build the residential customer base as much as possible first to ensure as good as, highly likelihood of success of the commercial tenants. I like the density, I like the lot sizes, and there appears to be at least a 1 acre conservation area in the center of this project.
So you're making a motion?
I'd like to finish.
Yes, sir, Dan, go ahead.
Okay, so everything you just said, I'm totally on board with, and I like it. I like this project. But before moving forward, we've got some broken parts that need to be fixed. It's kind of like the lady that zoomed in and said, we're putting the cart before the horse. We've got something out there that's broken. And before we move forward, I don't see the rush in doing this. Let's take a step back and fix the infrastructure, find out why they're getting raw sewage puddling up in their ditches and their yards, see where the health hazards at, and let's fix it, and then go forward.
I think the attorney addressed all that as far as the process from our standpoint, so.
Okay.
And I have a friend that I grew up with. He works for DEP in Tallahassee, and he is actually, what he does is he's in charge of compliance by water and sewer companies to make sure they're in compliance with all of their operations and things of that nature. Mr. Atkinson was correct that the Florida Department of Environmental Protection would be one of the areas to address that with. I mean,
Now, I hear all this, but I keep hearing these citizens saying, got raw sewage in our yard and our ditches. So I can't get past that. So here we go again.
We have a
I
question.
understand it wouldn't be coming from this project.
Well, we've closed. Yeah. We can't actually ask anybody out there because we've closed the public
Well,
hearing.
he's the applicant.
Yeah, but public hearing's closed at this point, so he can't add something new to a quasi judicial proceeding once Mr.
I want him to clarify something he's already said to make sure I understand.
I'm afraid, it's up to the chairman to reopen the public hearing at this point.
How important is your question?
Well, if I understood him correctly, the sewage from this development bypasses this lift station.
Yes, it does. That's what he said. It doesn't go into that lift station.
Right. So your concern about this lift station does not have an impact on this development?
I mean, sure, there's a concern about the lift station malfunctioning, but we don't know why it malfunctioning. We don't think it's got anything to do with the capacity. So we don't need to penalize the applicant here on something like that.
We don't know. We don't think, we're guessing,
We have been told by regional utilities that they can provide water and sewer. That is what's been provided to us. And the attorney has stated what the citizens' alternatives are if they have issues. And I don't know if they've done that already or not, but what we take is what's been presented to us, and it's been presented that they can provide that for this community.
I hear that. Saying they're backing up in sewage. So it's okay, we can go forward. You know where I'm gonna be. It's okay. We're gonna walk out of here as friends. I don't see the problem in fixing things that are broke before we move forward. But that's just me. That's okay.
Mr. Cosin, would it help address your issue if one of the conditions put on approval was a situation where, as part of the approval request, we request staff to obtain a statement from regional utilities regarding whether or not this development ties into that specific lift station, so that the BCC would have the opportunity to consider whether or not this addresses that issue or not?
That's a step in the right direction, but more importantly, I'd like to know that the citizens that live there can say, hey, thank you for fixing the problem. We don't have this anymore.
Mr. Cosin, this is where I'm going to have to respectfully tell you that that's not this board's duty.
Okay.
And I understand the citizens are raising that issue, and what I guess I'm saying is this board's role, especially in quasi-judicial, is so limited into what we can and cannot consider for an applicant's issue. And so from our purposes, we can ask staff to get clarification, and to the extent that the developer made that representation, and that's now part of this record, then certainly it's something staff can fact check and have the service provider in that area provide that statement to them. The citizens' statements may well be correct. That's not the dispute, and that's not the point that I'm trying to make at this time. I have no idea whether they're right or wrong. But if we accept their statement at face value, it may still not affect this project. This project not being approved or approved may not change that issue out there one way or the other. If this does not truly go through that lift station and the lift station is the problem, that's a separate issue. But lift station maintenance and oversight of it is something that our planning department writ large has no control over either. So what I'm trying to make sure we do is if we can address concerns that we've heard that we would like additional documentation in a file going forward, we can do that. Those are the type of conditions you can put on an approval. But beyond that, you're having to review the project as it is presented to you from the development order standpoint. And unfortunately, it appears we don't have anything in the record that this specific project would make that problem more worse, or that it would make it better not to do it. So just, I mean, that would be one solution that this board could do if you're wanting to take a step forward to assist in it.
I like your idea.
So conditional approval?
No.
I mean, a conditional, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was Mr. Chairman, I want to make a motion to approve by final order as presented, conditioned on the overlay ordinance being adopted.
Is that good?
That doesn't include my part, but that's up to each board member to make a motion. I was just offering one potential condition you could put on there.
Okay. We have a motion.
Would you repeat it?
Yes, I move to approve by final order as presented with condition of the overlay ordinance being adopted.
Do we have a second?
I move to approve as presented with the condition of the overlay ordinance being adopted.
Without conditional.
Correct, yeah.
Can I say something?
I second that.
Okay, so now you've got a second. Now you
Now you can talk, so, yeah, go ahead. What, you wanted to add something?
It doesn't hurt anything to pump the brakes. It doesn't hurt anything to say no, drop back and punt.
It is if you're the applicant.
Okay, well,
It's just
it's okay. Hey, it's okay.
I mean, it hurts them. I
It's,
mean,
it's okay.
it can potentially hurt the applicant. I mean, I don't know what kind of money they've got invested, if they've got bankers involved and interest is running, but it can hurt them. And we have to look at all sides.
I know. I get it. It's important to look at the applicant, but it's also important to look at the citizens. And I think it's well established. Y'all know that's where I'm at, so, and it's okay. It's okay.
But we're gonna make this applicant be responsible for something that's a regional utility problem.
That our
So we're asking
citizens are
them-
suffering in that neighborhood.
But it's not the applicant's fault.
And the applicant bypasses that lift station.
It's okay. We know how this vote's gonna go. Let's go.
Okay. Any other
Well,
questions, comments?
Yeah, and I mean, I lived in a county where the county decided to do a moratorium until they got their infrastructure up to snuff. We've not had that here. Do we have issues severe enough that we need to do that? And that's not our choice either. I'm having trouble with, when we've been provided information that they have what they need to go ahead, to then say, no, you can't do it.
Based on,
Not saying I've
And that's-
totally.
That's why I made the motion without the sewer requirements.
Right.
It doesn't bother me.
Okay.
based on our history and the way we're polluting the bay and all this stuff that has been allowed over the years under the premise of, well, it's legal, there's some trust issues on, are people doing the right thing? When they tell you the system's working, but the citizens are saying, no, it's not, there's some trust issues. And frankly, if you're taking a poll, I'm going to believe the citizens. So we know.
I'm not saying there aren't issues. It's just one, it hasn't been presented to us in the proper fashion that, in fact, they can't provide the services needed.
They can't provide the services needed, yet we're moving forward.
We
No,
were
she-
told that they can meet what they need.
I don't believe them.
Well, now, that's a different story that you,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're
Based on
ever going to
history-
believe
based on
anything that's
history.
presented before us then.
Based on history, I'm from Missouri. Show me.
So what you're saying is
Trust but verify.
the process that they go through and the information they give us, you're not going to believe it.
Question it.
Okay.
You say based on history, do you have history where regional utilities did not repair a lift station? I'm aware of, not aware of?
I've seen poor choices that hasn't helped the natural resources of this county.
Okay, well, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. All right, let's move on to the next project. Oh, we got one more of that,
Need
right?
to vote on the overlay, or on the ordinance itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's
All
do
right.
that.
I'll move to approve the overlay ordinance as presented.
Motion,
Seconded.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, motion carries. All right, now we move to the next project. Bluewater Landing.
Good evening, again, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. This is, Bluewater Landing is a major development order application submitted by Interlight Engineering Corporation on behalf of D.R. Horton Incorporated, requesting to construct a phased development consisting of 31 single-family homes, a pool amenity, associated infrastructure, and a future commercial phase on 35.19 plus or minus acres with a future land use of mixed use in a zoning district of small neighborhood. The property can be identified by the parcel numbers in your staff report, which I would like entered into the record, please.
Yes.
And if I could also get you should have 3 emails or a fax and 2 emails. If I could also please attach that to the aforementioned staff report.
Okay, sure.
If I can, before I get further into this, I just wanted to touch just briefly on the history of the project, kind of as a nod to both the stakeholders that you probably will see a lot of on Zoom, potentially hear from some of them, as well as the engineer and just county staff as well. This is a long time coming to this phase. It's been around, or the stage, excuse me, it's been around for about a year. Started as 186 triplex units. We're now down to 31 single-family homes, with a substantial proposed conservation easement that I will look to the applicant to address in more detail with you after my reporting here. One thing I want to make clear that this is not a PUD. It initially came as a planned unit development. It is not. The applicant is not seeking any deviations. They're staying below the small neighborhood required density that would require a PUD. Apart from that, there are no outstanding staff comments. They have satisfied everything that we have asked from them, and that would be required required in the code. I can take any questions that you have. That is all I'd like to say on that.
Any questions for staff? Thanks, sir. All right, the applicant.
And I'm David Smith with Interlight Engineering. And I want to echo what Stephen started in his presentation. We're glad to be here. And we've been in the system for a long time. And this is our first Planning Commission meeting. So we are excited to be before you all. And I also want to start with the history because I think that's very important. And the site is 35.19 acres and it's wooded. This is the property. This is Draper Lake, 35.19 acres, and this is County Road 30A. And for reference, this is Highland Parks, the community directly across the street from County Road 30A from our development. When we first made application, which specifically was on February the 5th of 2020, it was a planned unit development. It consisted of 186 triplex units. I just want to, I think it's important for you guys to see how this started and how we got to where we are today. So this, as you can see, is 106 triplex units located on the property. We then revised the planned unit development, 138 triplex units. Same general configuration, but reduced the unit count. We then made another revision to revise the plan to be 70 single-family homes. Finally, we revised the plan to be 31 single-family homes, and that's the application that's before you today, and I will do a presentation on that application. But we have had many meetings with the community. Our first community meeting was on June the 8th, and we had 138 participants, and that was on the 186 triplex units. And I think it's fair to say all of the participants were not in favor of the development as the way that it was proposed, or the fact that it was a planned unit development, and we were requesting deviations and variances. So we've had many community meetings by Zoom. I know you guys know I do this for a living. I've had more meetings, and it's a good thing, more meetings with the community. I've gotten a chance to know everyone, know Ms. Moreno very well, and we've had numerous community meetings, and I don't remember, Ms. Moreno, which community meeting, but finally I said, this is a team effort. And this became a team effort between the community, the developer, and us. So we are before you all with 31 single-family units and 1.77 acres of commercial. No PUD, no deviations, no variances, no preservation buyout. So this is a just straight development order with 31 single-family homes. And I want to show you all what that looks like. the application that's before you, there's the 31 homes. We have a connection to County Road 30A. It's directly across from the existing connection to Highland Park. I do want to point out, we are preserving the majority of the property. And as staff presented, one of the items that was very important to the residents was they were concerned with access to the lake. That was a concern, we had as well. So one of the things we've agreed to do is we are dedicating a conservation easement. It's actually going to be fee simple is our proposal, not easement. We're dedicating the back portion of the property, and specifically that line runs here, just south of the development. So this will be the conservation delineation. Everything south to the lake, we propose to dedicate to Walton County in fee simple. And we've had several meetings regarding once that property is dedicated to Walton County, that it would then be further established and maintained by a land trust. I've been a part of meetings on that as well, and that's something certainly, once D.R. Horton transfers the property, they are okay if the county chooses to then take the next step and dedicate the property to land trust, and that'll ensure that it's preserved and maintained and that it's not accessed, and that's our goal as well. So that's why we've agreed to do it.
So basically, they're not going to do anything with it. It's just going to be, it stays as is.
And that's our goal. That was the residents' goal and our goal as well. And we wanted to come up with a mechanism to ensure that happened for everyone. Again, I want to emphasize team effort. That was something we agreed to do. So that's the way, if the county owns it and the county chooses to then dedicate it into land trust or keep it, the county can then decide what they would like to do with it. So that's something that D.R. Horton was certainly willing to do. I do want to point out that the maximum allowable density for small neighborhood is up to 10 units per acre. And you have to comply with certain items in the land development code for a developer to be able to achieve anything close to 10 units per acre. Our proposed density is 0.88 units per acre. We are less than 1 dwelling unit per acre. The development has been sited to the greatest extent possible as far away from Draper Lake. Draper Lake is an environmentally sensitive ecosystem. It's pristine lake, it's coastal dune lake, and we certainly wanted to do our part to cluster the development to the greatest extent possible away from the lake. We are well away from any coastal dune lake protection zone. We're not within the 300-foot coastal dune lake protection zone, so we are clear of those coastal dune lake protection zones. Once we made the revision to the development plan for the layout that's before you all this evening for 31 single-family lots, 1.77 acres of commercial, one of the items that was discussed in the TRC meeting, there was a concern that was raised regarding what type of commercial uses may be permitted within the commercial component of this mixed-use development. So we were advised at one of the TRC meetings to go back, work with the neighborhood. We specifically worked with Ms. Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman, and to discuss the possibility of additional conditions being placed on the development that would restrict the type of commercial uses that could be permitted in this location. And I want to read the conditions into the record. I read them in at TRC as well. I don't think they're in the staff report as conditions, but we do want them added because that's something we committed to do, and Ms. Moreno can obviously speak to that as well. So condition number 1, no commercial businesses for the primary use of outdoor events, i.e. weddings, parties, or other gatherings. Number 2, no outdoor entertainment as an ancillary use to a commercial business that uses amplified sound such as stages and amphitheaters. And then condition number 3, this does not preclude the permitting of any other use allowed under the code and noise ordinance. So that was agreed to by Ms. Ward representing the community as agreed by us as the developer. So again, we want to make sure that the commercial uses are restricted. It protects the citizens in the community, and we certainly are doing our part to try to achieve that. So I'm going to be brief, but can I know there's some people who would like to speak as well. May I speak at the end after everyone speaks?
Sure, we
also?
always give the applicant a chance to respond to the public comments.
Then I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have of me.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant?
There was one concern raised in one of the letters that I question a little bit. It says that the buffer between the project and 30A is too narrow. Certainly that you're meeting county standards. Am I correct in that?
You're absolutely correct. We have a 20-foot buffer provided, as well as the rear of the lots are an additional 5 feet. And one of the items with landscaping, there's a wall that's located there now, if you all are familiar with that curve. And we do have to remove portions of the wall. And we do want to have a safe drive connection for site visibility, so some of the wall will have to be removed. So any vegetation that has to be replaced, we have committed to go above and beyond to make sure that it's an opaque screening. And I've even offered to Ms. Moreno, once we get to that point, we're more than happy to discuss the vegetation. But we do meet and exceed the county standard for that buffer along County Road 38.
I mean, couple of the other complaints, but obviously you're meeting the requirements. They may not understand what, because they're saying that there are too many lots, things like that, and that's obviously that's not the case. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
We just had a meeting not too long ago about the mobility plan and how they were going to be widening 30A.
I think they were going to use the right-of-way they have. I don't think they're
Right.
widening 30A.
Right, they're taking the right of way that they already have.
Yeah, I don't think they can take property without
Okay,
paying for it, so.
Okay, so as far as egress and evacuation goes, as far as getting out of here in case of a hurricane or a fire or whatever, instead of connecting this to this road over here and dead ending into a cul-de-sac, was there any thought of connecting to the other road or?
Question. Multiple layouts and discussions, and we've actually had a layout that had a connection further down to the south. And I know the residents down at the retreat did not prefer a connection that close to the drive, so that's why we've located the connection across. That's one of the reasons we've located the connection across from Highland Park, because it's also central in the curve. It is a sharp curve, and we want to be as safe as possible so that you're in the center of the curve and can see as far as possible. We've evaluated connecting at multiple locations, and we've had layouts with different connections, but this, again, it goes beyond the developer in this, and you'll hear Ms. Moreno speak as well. This has become a team effort of community, developer. I know I don't want to make it sound like everyone's in support, but we have come a long way, and this layout is a result of citizens, community, and us all working together.
Well, I know D.R. Horton got a black eye when this first came out, probably 2 black eyes, and they have definitely come a long way from the original design. So I give them credit for sticking in there and working it out.
We're proud of it. We're proud, and I'm proud of it to be a part of it and where we've come. And I know Ms. Moreno will speak next, but it's been a team effort, and I said it, and that's what it became.
Any other questions for the applicant?
This is a county issue, but possibly you're addressing it to pass. There was one concern of so many cars parking off 30A, and that is allowed. That is legal. The county has never done anything to stop that in this place. Is there anything that will change given the development here? Will there be some keeping people from parking along on the shoulder between the road and the bike path?
They're not accessing from 30A on that side. There's a wall up there anyway.
Well, we are removing portions of that wall, but we provide our parking and exceed the parking internally.
I know you don't. Public comes along and parks in those on those strips, and there was concern. I realize it's a county issue that they don't prohibit parking in that area. I just just wondered if there was anything that was going to change because of your development.
We had no plans for parking along 30A or to incorporate it.
I don't think I've ever seen people park in that area right there on the road.
Not on that particular
No,
area.
not in that area.
It's a long way from the beach.
Yeah, there's
Long
no
walk, yeah.
accesses right in there to the beach.
I've only been down there a few times, so I don't know.
No, they'll park in front of Sally's down there. And Blue Maple.
So do all the sewage systems work here, the ones that are?
They do. They do. They do. We have that's a good question. We have a availability letter. We are coordinating with the utility that owns and maintains.
Citizens aren't complaining about sewage flooding their neighborhood.
We are connecting to a force main in 30A. So.
Okay. The only real serious question that I've got, and somebody's going to have to get with me later, hopefully you, Mr. Atkinson, is one of the things I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is the developers always want to pack more sardines into the sardine can. And this is the most highly densest populated area of our county. And there's a lot of other land out here, but we all keep wanting to overload an already gridlocked place. And I'm just having, you know, the thought comes to my mind is the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around why we keep wanting to stuff more sardines in an already capacity sardine can. But that's my problem. I need to get over it, apparently, and I need somebody to educate me on that.
But it has to do with demand.
Yeah, it demand, yeah, but if the trend is less than 1 unit per acre, which this project is, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Very good thing.
Okay.
But, you know, in our land development code and comp plan, you know, we're not like Panama City. We're not doing high rises all over the place. We're cramming even more in there. I mean, our densities are low compared to a lot of the counties around here, which is good. I mean, it creates value for these properties a lot more than it is in our neighboring counties. So, I mean, there's some good sides to this, but demand is the main thing. We got people moving here like crazy.
I appreciate y'all's patience with me. I really do.
All right, we got any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we can let Max speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to speak before the board tonight. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. Speaking to Mr. Coase's point, we are proposing not to do the same thing over and over, as is the definition of insanity. The mobility plan is a significant change in county policy, should that be adopted, but that is what is being proposed to radically change how we manage transportation concurrency in the county. It has a parking component to it. It will address those things related to parking on County Road 30A in later iterations, but getting the system changed so that we start moving people as opposed to cars will be a significant policy change for the board if they choose to move in that direction. One thing I would like to say about this particular project, this may be the single project that holds the record for staying in the technical review committee stage of the review process. Certainly for the many years that I've been with the county, but probably in the history of Walton County. And that certainly is a testimony to Stephen Schoen's diligent review of this particular project and making sure that it addresses every aspect of our comprehensive plan and land development code. But beyond that, the applicant's agent, David Smith, has taken the attitude that this is a partnership with the community. This is a tremendously environmentally sensitive parcel of land. It's a large parcel, but most of it has tremendous environmental sensitivity. And beyond that, we have some beautiful communities that surround it that are very respectful of the environmental sensitivity of that lake. We had over 16 or so groups, homeowners associations that were involved in the community meetings that David had, trying to work out these issues and get to a project proposal that would be most compatible, still allowing some amount of development, but would be most compatible with surrounding communities and respectful of the environmental sensitivity of this particular part of the county. So I'd certainly like to applaud Ms. Morano and all of the members of the associations that worked hard with David, get to a project that is being presented today for your consideration. This may be the largest amount of public participation in a very positive manner that we may have had in Walton County, certainly in what I can recall, and that's a testimony to the community representatives and to the applicant's agent. And I just want to thank those groups.
Thanks, Mac. We appreciate it. Anybody got any questions for Mac? Okay, then we'll open to public comment. We've got John Harrison on Zoom. Mr. Harrison, you there?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my name's John Harrison. I live on Draper Lake in the retreat, next to the subject property. I represent the retreat HOA board, save30a.org, and I'm also a member of the 30A Alliance. As mentioned, over the last 14 months, 16 30A communities have worked with D.R. Horton and David Smith to discuss this project and get it to where it is now. And it's gone from 187 townhomes down to 31 single-family homes, commercial, and a conservation easement preservation area of the wetlands and a good portion of the uplands. And that area is actually approximately 23 acres of the 34-acre tract. It's mostly wetlands, but it does contain a good portion of uplands. And that's a significant amount of property. And it encompasses all the land of this tract on Draper Lake. It's a very big deal to the community to have this area preserved, and it was a key part of our negotiation. You know, we really wish there would be no development on this site. It's a pristine, sensitive tract on our coastal dune lake, but you know, we realize that the property developers have the right to develop their land as long as it's in a responsible way and, you know, in compliance with the land development code. So, subject to having a strong conservation easement or a similar preservation arrangement, we don't oppose Horton's current application. In fact, we appreciate their efforts to work with us. We're of the understanding that this conservation easement or preservation area would be conveyed upon the recording of their plat. We're working with D.R. Horton, David Smith, and Steve Hall of Walton County on the best structure to accomplish this goal. We're all confident we can finalize this arrangement before the BCC meeting. We're also all in agreement that this preservation area should be perpetual. It should preserve the wetlands and uplands in its current undisturbed state without any improvements and to protect our native wildlife. The local community feels that the conservation easement preservation area should be administered by a third-party nonprofit land trust, which specializes in the documentation, the monitoring, and enforcement of these types of conservation easements. The county shouldn't be burdened with this administration, monitoring its compliance, and they simply don't have the staff to enforce it. The 30A community feels so strongly in this regard that we're willing to fund the cost to perpetually monitor and enforce the easement by a third-party land trust. That's a big commitment on the community. We have a agreement with a reputable third-party land trust on very favorable terms, and we've gotten verbal commitments for the funding subject to everything getting approved. This has been a team effort. And we really hope that, this is gonna be a model of how developments are done in the future, working with the community. I want to give big kudos to the planning department, D.R. Horton, and David Smith on this. They've been good to work with, and we hope we push it home and get this conservation area preserved forever for everybody in Walton County.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else on Zoom that wants to speak? Okay. I know Ms. Morano wanted to speak, so.
Well, I am on the board of South Walton Community Council, and I'm representing the opinion of the board tonight. Excuse me. We've definitely been involved in this project since February 2020. Excuse me. And we do support 31 single-family homes. We support the conservation easement deeded hopefully to a third-party land trust. We've also supported the limitation of noise on the 1.77 acres. We also are looking at something sustainable and an attractive landscape plan that will showcase not only the development, but the designation of 30A as a national scenic byway. Well, how did we get to this point? You've heard David Smith, you've heard the history, but I want to add something, communication. Let me start with the planning department and the TRC process. And Mac was right. I think we have been the longest in the TRC process, and that's where the rubber meets the road. By the time it gets to you, you want it all worked out. This project is all worked out. Stephen Schoen, who's sitting, there's Stephen. He's great. He's the senior planner for Walton County. He was open, he was informative, he was knowledgeable, he was always willing to take calls to explain technical details of the project, and believe me, I called him. And we sat, we've had Zoom calls, I had my group come in to see him, we wore our masks, but every time I called Stephen, he answered. In fact, if there's any merit pay, and I'll say this before BCC, Stephen should be the first one to get it. We met many times with a small group of concerned citizens who represented 16 neighborhood associations. Matt Carpenter was also in the loop, as you heard from the very beginning, and he guided this project, which is on a very environmentally sensitive property on a coastal dune lake. His patience was unbelievable during all the times we met at the TRC. The second part of this is David Smith from Innerlight Engineering. David held neighborhood meetings by Zoom, and it didn't start out kumbaya, as you heard. I mean, that was 186 units, give me a break. It didn't start very well, but as I said, it was a perfect storm, but it's turning out to be a happy holiday. And David was open to the community. Of course, he represented a client, but it had various twists and turns, but he worked in a very calm demeanor. He rose to the challenges that we put forth. He was a Southern gentleman in all the ways positive, and then we came to a workable plan. I've come to understand the role of an engineer in these projects. And you saw when I stood here before you, I was not very pleased with the other engineer on that other project. But anyway, the role of the engineer in this project is so important, and how they work with the people. It's not lawyers that get the end result. It's the people. It's the engineer, it's the developer, it's the community. And David represented his client well, but he also was transparent with the community and treated everyone with respect and caring. Representatives of the developer, D.R. Horton, they were able to interface with us via Zoom. There was no smoke and mirrors. We saw them. There were phone representatives, and they didn't go through any legal hoops or formalities. They were straight on with us, and we were able to reach the place that we are here today. And this was wonderful with the conservation easement. I can't tell you what a big step that really was and is. 16 neighborhood associations work through South Walton Community Council, Save 30A, 30A Alliance, and the Coastal Dune Lake Advisory. All these people work together. This project is finally compatible with the neighborhood. Was this easy for all the folks involved? No, but the result took time, negotiation, compromise, sensitivity to the community, and caring. And that, we hope, is a model for you going forward. Dan, you mentioned listening to the community. I can't tell you how important that is, and it doesn't happen all the time for all the projects that go through. In this project, we were heard. Now, we have only just begun because the details of the landscape plan, as David mentioned, we still need to work on. I have a feeling I'm going to be standing there saying, no, not that tree. But anyway, I think, but I have to get a group together who really knows what they're doing and following code and get the right types of landscaping. This project is also environmentally sensitive land. And David, I was going to ask you, there's a commercial component there. Will that be clear cut, or are you going to wait till that gets sold separately? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Crane Rogers is with D.R. Horton, and he is on Zoom. So, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind. Crane, would your intent be to clear the commercial component at this time?
Y'all hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we would plan to leave the commercial parcel wooded. We would not clear it. For exactly what Barbara discussed, is it would just leave more area undisturbed, and no, our intent would be to leave it wooded.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Wow, you just heard something unbelievable. The engineer's up here, the developer's on the phone, and we got what we wanted. This is great. Thank you, David. So in summation, commissioners, SWCC recommends that you move this on to the BCC level, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we got anybody else? I think no Zoom, so nobody else in the audience. So we'll close the public comments. David, did you have anything else you wanted to add to this?
Very brief, but again, we've come a long way, and I want to thank staff, thank Mac, thank Stephen. I want to thank Ms. Moreno. They treated me with respect. In that first meeting, that was interesting, and they were very respectful to me. So I want to thank Ms. Moreno. Mr. Harrison, he's been involved, and there's other people I'm forgetting as well. So I wanted to thank them as well, and I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Board?
I have not heard one word from a citizen with any negative comments. This is, okay. This is about the best thing I've heard tonight.
Didn't start out that way. Come a long way. Any other comments? You making a motion?
Motion to approve.
We got a motion, a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Before we go, can I ask a question? Would it be out of order during public comment to ask them to give us their address?
I don't know, but address?
I'd like to know where they,
It's not part of the county's current policy manual. It'd be something we'd have to ask to take up. So, I mean, it's not inappropriate, but certainly is not part of the standard
how do y'all
process
feel
now.
about that?
Are you concerned about how close they live to a project?
Well, if somebody's right there at the project, that carries more weight with me.
I understand.
I mean, if it's somebody miles away and that's happened before.
Yeah.
I believe when we used to do sign-in sheets, we used to ask them to place their address on the record many moons ago. So that may be something we can revisit.
I just like to feel the board out.
Yeah, when I served on the City of Destin's local planning agency, it was common for people to state the physical address, the residence, but I don't know that it ever really made a difference.
You mentioned
to the
skin in
boys.
the game. That's part of it.
I got one for Mr. Atkinson. When we do these quasi judicial hearings, everybody up in here stands up and is sworn in, but what about on Zoom?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that I didn't take up tonight. In some, now that the governor's executive orders have basically completely sunset on the state of emergency and at the end of this month, I think the problem likely will resolve itself because I think a lot of local governments who've been allowing Zoom participation in hearings are probably going to move away from that. The discretion we had to do remote swear in to take testimony, that becomes an issue. I will say this. I don't know if you were advised when this process started. I was not here, but the prevailing trend regarding quasi-judicial testimony is if you choose to allow people to participate via Zoom or through CMT communications, media technology, or similar methods, it is a situation where it has been assumed that a person who's testifying there is doing so not under quasi-judicial proceeding as actual sworn testimony, but rather is just fulfilling their public participation opportunity under Florida Sunshine Law. I don't know that any case law got tried on this issue during that time, but certainly the advice would be if the only person speaking against it or the only people speaking against it are on Zoom and are unsworn, that will probably be insufficient evidence for the purposes of the law to allow you to deny a project. But given the governor's orders of sunset and we're now going to be moving back into open business, I think the county's going to have to address whether it continues to use Zoom, and that would probably resolve it at that time. So.
Okay, good to
But
know.
yes, sir, it is an issue. Technically, for the legal system, just them having their name there on Zoom without me being able to see them or produce ID would be insufficient for a judge to swear them in.
All right, thank you, sir.
So before we dismiss, are we done? Okay, because we're under the sunshine law, this is the only time we can really talk. So a few months ago, a friend of mine who's a very hardcore, staunch champion of our environment and natural resources, Debbie Hurd, you allowed her to come do a presentation on a project called the Choctawhatchee Clean Water Initiative. And you passed it to the BCC, and I thank you for that. Since then, she's talked to 4 of the 5 county commissioners face-to-face, has their total support. She's had a one-on-one meeting with Mac Carpenter, I understand. Is that correct, Mac? And she said and she said that you gave her your total support. You were very excited about this. So we're making a difference. We're making a difference, and we're doing good things. And I would like to believe that all of us sitting here are here for a reason, and we can come up with good ideas and put them forward, and make it a better Walton County. And I just wanted to thank y'all for supporting me on that Choctawhatchee Clean Water Initiative program, and it is gaining traction, and it is gaining a lot of support. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.
Hey, good to see you, man.
Oh, what I was about to tell you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm still